The copy of the Rise of the Valkyrie Master Set for Heroscape I received at 9 years old was one of the few things I owned as a young lad that could reliably impress my friends. My chapter books were rarely of any interest to them. My Power Mac G4, which I used exclusively for writing, could only play chess, so that was a flop. But the giant red games stuffed to the brim with Vikings, dragons, swords, magic, secret agents, giant robots, army men, and guns never failed to strike even the most SpongeBob-addled GameCube addict among them with quiet wonder. Our brains were lightning rods, and Heroscape was the most lovingly crafted bolt Zeus had ever thrown. It even had an orc riding a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Like, that's visual crack for 9-year-olds. Heroscape was the first game of its size that I learned and taught to others entirely on my own. I loved it and every one of its 30 pre-painted figures, from the tops of their heads all the way down to their weak ankles. Even Finn the Viking warrior, who had the weakest ankles of them all. I casually collected it over the next few years, and I, like probably many of you, was sad when Wizards of the Coast took it out back and Old Yellered it in 2010, and perplexed when they released the vastly inferior Arena of the Planeswalkers soon after, only to curb stomp that into oblivion, where it belongs. And now, like the Aliens franchise, Heroscape has been recalled from the grave. Hopefully we're all better off for it, but let's find out. I realize that some of you may never have played this or even heard of it until now, so I'll take a quick moment to catch you up on what Heroscape is before jumping into what makes this incarnation of it different from the original, and then I'll offer up my opinion on whether I think it might be worth spending your hard-earned money on. As usual, my objective is to provide you with information to help you determine whether this might merit a home in your collection. Heroscape is a miniatures war game set in Valhalla, a universe whose lore could be described as vague, especially for a game that shares a genre with Warhammer 40k. Unless you read the comics and get into the web series. All I really know about it at this point from reading the rule books is that it's home to a people called the Kyrie, and these Kyrie are all obsessed with ancient wellsprings dotted around the realm. The wellsprings grant powers to anyone who sips from them. Immortality, and the ability to summon people to Valhalla from other worlds, which is insane. I mean, just think you could be enjoying a chunk of cheese, a nice wine, and maybe a baguette in Calais, and suddenly you're whisked away to a Kyrie army where you're forced to join a giant war over hot tubs. All of the Kyrie are, of course, super interested in soaking their little Kyrie nubbins in these wellsprings to get the magic powers, but they get greedy about it. War breaks out, and that's the game. You and your opponents are Kyrie generals who have slurped from the wellsprings, and you command assortments of people you've summoned from other universes. You build armies and fight each other in scenarios that you could either pull from the rulebook or make up on your own. Battles in Heroscape are extremely simple. At the start of every round, players distribute order markers among their army cards, then roll a 20-sided die, with the player who rolls highest going first. That player then reveals the order marker they placed on an army card with the number 1 on it, indicating that it's the first turn they are taking in the round. They move and attack with any figures on that army card remaining on the battlefield, then play passes to the next player who reveals their order marker, then activates their corresponding figures. If you reveal an order marker on an army card that has no figures remaining on the battlefield, you skip your turn. After everyone's revealed all of their order markers, you'll gather them all up and start a new round, repeating that process until someone has completed their scenario objective, which is usually just to murder everybody on the opposing team. But sometimes it can be different. It is, in all respects, a fairly standard kind of war game, but there are several things about the Heroscape system that are just plain cool. Number 1, your battle doesn't unfold directly on your tabletop. Instead, it takes place on a battlefield you can break apart and customize using plastic terrain pieces. These pieces are colored to resemble certain types of terrain, and the original Heroscape included grass, sand, stone, snow, ice, cobblestone road, water, swamp, magma, and lava. Building your map takes a lot of time before you start playing, but it is so fun to work with your friends to build your own unique corner of a fantasy universe. Plus, the hexes are used to count range and movement, eliminating the need for tape measures, laser pointers, rulers, or any other construction equipment to play the game. Number 2, you can mix and match units in your army without any limits. If you want cowboys, ghosts, samurai, and pirates in your army, that's totally fine. Go for it. Number 3, there are 2 different rule sets for the game. A basic rule set and an advanced rule set. The advanced rule set introduces increased health for heroes, special abilities on your army cards, and the order marker system I talked about earlier. The basic rule set gets rid of all that and allows you to move your units around the battlefield and shoot at each other, which can be perfect if you don't want to deal with extra rules. Finally, number 4, which is basically all the other first 3 kind of combined. Heroscape was designed by people who apparently asked the question, what if tabletop miniatures games were accessible and fun? As a result, the design is full of common sense solutions to classic dilemmas that confront wargamers, like managing line of sight rules and complex abilities attached to unique units. Have a question about an ability for a unit? No problem, just read the unit's army card. No flipping through rulebooks required. Unsure of whether you can actually shoot that tentacled menace? Get level with the attacking creature's head. If you can see any part of that figure's hit zone, which is printed on its army card, you can take the shot. Veteran wargamers may chafe at the simplicity, but for those of us who see the line of sight rules for Star Wars Legion and shudder, Heroscape is a promising alternative. So that is what Heroscape is. What is different about this version of it? Well, the Heroscape fans among us will likely be pleased to hear that as far as mechanics go, virtually nothing. The engine under the hood is the same one that powered all of the epic battles we waged against our friends in the 2000s. Everything you get in an Age of Annihilation box can be mixed and matched with any other Heroscape product, and as long as you got the pre-painted models, it'll blend in perfectly. The lion's share of the differences between the original and this version come in the form of changes to its distribution model and price point. Currently, Renegade Games offers 3 products for Age of Annihilation: a master set, a terrain pack, and a battle box, which functions as a 2-player starter set and also happens to be the product I've got in front of me. The master set includes 20 figures, along with terrain tiles and all of the other bits, and is marked at $124.99, though that's the version with unpainted minis. If you want them painted, you'll have to fork over another $100, bringing your total sticker price to $225, which is 5 times what the original Rise of the Valkyrie master set cost in 2004. But hey, that was 20 years ago. That was 20 years ago. The 2-player starter set that I've got in front of me comes with 6 figures and cost me about $45, though that was for the unpainted version. If you want the paint, you'll have to pay $70. The terrain pack doesn't come with any figures, it comes with trees and some bushes that you can use to spruce up your battlefield, and that will run you about $40. If you buy the pre-painted versions of everything, you are looking at a grand total of about $340. If you go with the unpainted, you'll be shelling out a more respectable but still considerable $220. Cut the terrain pack altogether, you're looking at about $170 easy, or $300 if you go with the pre-painted versions. That is a lot to pay for Heroscape. I mean, it's 2024, back in Heroscape's prime, $40 or $50 went a lot farther than it does now. I get it, but still, it's bizarre to see this game go from something you'd buy your 10-year-old at Toys R Us to a luxury board game item. As a $40, $50, or even $60 game, Heroscape is laughably easy to recommend. As a $200 game, I mean, it's great, but there's a lot of great games out there you can buy for $200. Many of them you can buy for significantly less. If we narrow the field to just war games, the value proposition gets a bit better since you can buy a full pre-painted collection of Age of Annihilation for a fraction of the cost of what a single army would cost you in some war games. But is it worth it? If you're invested in the IP, I'd recommend picking this up. It features the Heroscape you know and love, and the game, at least for now, seems to be in good hands. The new characters feature some abilities that feel innovative and fresh. Most of the sculpts are eye-catching, and all of the familiar faces from Valhalla are here. Utgar, Vidar, Jandar, the Marrow. The band's back together. With luck, it'll stick around for years to come, and the vast potential we all saw in Heroscape will at last be realized. I can't guarantee it won't go down in flames like its crowdfunding campaign did last year, but Renegade Games certainly seems interested in convincing us that it won't. They've got ambitious plans for its future, and I, for one, hope they pan out. If you aren't invested in the IP and the appearance of Evil Raylin in the master set for Age of Annihilation doesn't thrill you, whether you should get Heroscape or something else depends on how much you value two things: accessibility and aesthetics. While it has plenty to offer older players, Heroscape for me has always excelled as a game to play with kids. If you're a parent looking for something you can bust out with your 8 to 12-year-old, you'd be hard-pressed to find something better than Heroscape. Constructing the battlefield is a project that kindles the imaginations of all involved. Both the basic and advanced gameplay reliably delivers cinematic experiences in a visual language that young people intuitively understand. That's not to say it isn't fun to play as an adult, because it absolutely is. It scales magnificently when you're playing against older opponents, providing you with manifold opportunities to exploit synergies between characters and outwit your enemies. All of that accessibility does not come at the trade-off of aesthetics. It plays really well with kids, but it doesn't look so much like a kid's game that you'd be embarrassed to show it off in front of your friends. It's a pretty darn cool war game, and it looks the part. If owning something like that piques your interest, I'd recommend picking up the 2-player starter set that I've got here. It's got everything you need to try the game at a pleasantly affordable $45 or a less affordable $70 if you want the pre-painted version. The minis, the terrain tiles, the dice, the cards are all of good quality, and it contains some special alternate water tiles. The only complaint I have with this box is that it doesn't contain enough terrain tiles of specific types to allow you to build the maps in the scenario book exactly as they're presented. You can build the maps, don't get me wrong. All of the elevation and stuff that is important for the rules will be there, so you'll be able to play the games as they're meant to be played, but the parts of your map will just be different colors. For example, the first scenario requires you to have more 7-hex grass tiles than are available in the box, so you'll have to substitute one of those tiles with a stone tile. Functionally, stone and grass in Heroscape are the same, so that has no impact on gameplay, but it is something you should be aware of if you go to buy this. By the way, if you're hearing everything in this video and it sounds interesting, you want to learn more, Heroscape does have an active community over on Reddit. You can check out their conversations if you want to know more about the game. That is my review of Heroscape: Age of Annihilation. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe. If you can, we'd love to see you around. Until then, I hope your evenings are full of great games played in the best of company, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!